What if Tywin Lannister became Hand of the King to Robert after Ned refused? Let's explore how this decision changes the course of history. The flickering torches barely illuminate the cold stone walls. The statues of the old kings of winter stand silent as Robert and Ned walk deeper into the crypt, their boots echoing against the damp floor. The air is heavy with the scent of dust and old sorrow. They stop before Lyanna Stark's statue. Robert stares at it, jaw clenched.
She should have been my queen. Everything would have been different.
Ned doesn't respond. He's heard these words before. Robert exhales sharply, turning to face his old friend.
Jon Arryn is gone, and I need a hand. Someone I can trust. Someone who won't scheme behind my back or fill my head with lies.
Ned runs a hand over the cold stone of Lyanna's crypt. He takes his time before answering.
I cannot be that man, Robert.
Gods be good, Ned. You were always a stubborn fool. You think I'd rather have some vulture advising me? Some snake from the south?
My brother rode south when a king called him. My father followed. Neither returned. I have my sons, my duty. My place is here.
Your place is at my side.
You are my king, my friend. But I would not be the hand you need.
Then you leave me no choice. The betrothal is off. Joffrey will not marry your daughter.
The words hang between them like a blade. Ned doesn't flinch, but the tension in his shoulders is visible. Robert steps away from the crypt, his voice low and angry.
Damned Starks and their damned honor.
He turns and walks away, his heavy boots echoing in the crypt. Before we dive into Cersei's scheme to put her father in power, take a second to subscribe and hit the bell. It helps us bring you more epic content. Thanks for the support. Now let's get into it. The royal entourage is waiting. The moment Robert emerges from the crypt, his face a storm of frustration, he barks the order.
We leave, now.
Cersei, standing beside Jaime, smirks ever so slightly. She doesn't need to ask what happened. She already knows. As the horses are readied, she steps closer to Robert, her voice silken, calculated.
It seems your friend has abandoned you.
Robert doesn't answer. He grabs a wineskin from his squire and takes a long swig, then mounts his horse. Cersei watches him with an amused glint in her eyes. She had already planned her next move. Sunlight streams through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the polished stone floor. The sound of the city below hums faintly in the distance. Robert Baratheon and Cersei Lannister sit across from each other at a large wooden table. The remnants of a morning feast, half-eaten bread, a plate of roasted meat, and a near-empty flagon of wine lie between them. Robert, already on his third cup of wine, leans back in his chair, his massive frame slumped, his fingers tapping absently against the armrest. Cersei, perfectly poised, barely touches her goblet. Her emerald eyes study him, waiting for the right moment.
I should have had Stark's head on a spike for wasting my time.
Yes, because executing one of the most respected lords in Westeros always ends well.
He left me to rot in this bloody chair, just like your father did when I took the throne.
Yes, and look where that got him. Waiting, watching, while you drink yourself into an early grave.
Tywin Lannister? I'll be damned before I put another lion at my throat.
And yet, you have no better option.
I've got plenty of options. I could name Stannis. He'd run the realm with a rod up his arse. But at least he's no Lannister.
Yes, do that. Name Stannis. He'll strip the gold from the crown and march to Dragonstone the second you displease him. And when you drink yourself into oblivion, he'll be the one left holding the realm. Our son will be nothing but an afterthought.
Robert grits his teeth, his fingers tightening around the goblet. He hates when she's right.
My father built this kingdom while you were still fighting for it. He knows how to keep it together. Let him.
Robert leans forward now, his eyes narrowing. There's a flicker of the old warrior in him, the man who once seized a crown with fire and blood.
I know what this is. You want your father ruling so he can push me out of my own kingdom.
Cersei meets his gaze, unflinching. There's a long pause before she smiles, soft, almost pitying.
You think you still have a kingdom to rule? You can fight it all you want. But you don't want to rule, Robert. You never have. You won the throne because you were strong, but look at you now. You despise the council, you ignore the treasury, you drown your days in wine and your nights in whores. My father will handle everything. And you can drink and fuck yourself into oblivion, just as you always wanted.
Robert stares at her, jaw tight, nostrils flaring. His fingers drum against the wood, the only sound in the tense silence. Then he exhales sharply, a bitter chuckle escaping his lips.
7 hells.
He downs the rest of his wine in one long gulp, then slams the goblet onto the table.
Fine. Send your damned raven.
Cersei tilts her head slightly, allowing herself a small, satisfied smile. She doesn't gloat. She doesn't need to. She got what she wanted. Tywin Lannister as Hand of the King? This changes everything. But do you think Robert made the right call, or was this the beginning of a disaster? Let me know in the comments. The sun glares over the city as the gates of the Red Keep swing open. The banners of House Lannister are already being raised higher than before. The Golden Lion roars over King's Landing now, more than it ever did under Robert's rule. Tywin Lannister rides through, flanked by a retinue of armored knights bearing the sigil of his house. His face, carved from cold stone, betrays no emotion. The air itself seems to tighten under his presence. Robert may still wear the crown, but from this day forward, Tywin Lannister rules the realm. Tywin stands at the center of the room, his back straight, his hands folded behind him like a general before battle. Across from him, Cersei, Jaime, and Tyrion sit in a tense silence. For a moment, no one speaks. The crackling of the hearth is the only sound. Then Tywin's voice cuts through the quiet like a blade.
Kevan will rule Casterly Rock in my stead.
Ah, and here I thought my dear uncle might die of boredom before ever touching power. And what of me, father? No lordship for your favorite son?
I would rather let Casterly Rock burn to its foundations than see you sully its name.
Silence. Jaime shifts uncomfortably. Cersei merely watches, her expression unreadable. Tyrion lets out a slow breath, shaking his head.
Of course.
Now, Joffrey, how ready is he to rule should the need arise?
Cersei sits up straighter, a flash of pride in her eyes.
He is ready. He understands what it means to be king. He will be strong.
A short, sharp laugh from Tyrion. He leans back in his chair, pouring himself another drink.
Yes, strong indeed. A strong little sadist who enjoys making cats scream.
Cersei glares daggers at him, but Tywin raises a hand before she can snap back. His voice remains cold, calm, absolute.
The realm does not need another mad king.
He is not mad.
No, he is spoiled, undisciplined, and ignorant of what it means to rule. That ends today.
Cersei's lips press into a thin line, but she does not challenge him. Not here. Not now. Tywin turns back to Tyrion.
Peter Baelish cannot be trusted. I will not have a whoremonger playing with the crown's debts. You will take his place as master of coin.
You despise me, yet you want me counting your gold.
You are still a Lannister, and I do not entrust our wealth to fools.
For once, Tyrion has no clever retort. He merely nods, draining the last of his cup. Before we get into Joffrey's education, subscribe and hit the bell button. It really helps us create better content. The Iron Throne looms over the hall. Tywin sits beside it, his posture composed, exuding complete control. He told Joffrey to join him, to learn what it means to rule. Joffrey, wearing a pristine golden tunic, is perched on the actual throne, in his father's sit, his fingers drumming impatiently against the armrest. Before them, a dirt-stained farmer kneels. The man's voice shakes as he pleads.
My lord, the taxes have risen too high. My family can barely...
Joffrey's expression sours. He shifts in his seat, irritated.
Do I look like a beggar's keeper?
The farmer freezes, fear creeping into his eyes. Joffrey leans forward, his lips curling into something cruel.
Sir Elin, cut out his tongue. Let's see how well he complains then.
Gasps ripple through the room. The farmer recoils, his face going pale. Sir Elin steps forward, sword in hand. But before he can move, a voice slices through the chamber like ice.
Enough.
The halls fall silent. Tywin doesn't look at Joffrey immediately. Instead, he turns to the farmer, his voice measured, steady.
Your grievances have been heard. You may go.
The farmer scrambles to his feet and stumbles away, not daring to look back. Now, Tywin turns to Joffrey. His stare is heavy, suffocating. Joffrey tries to meet it, but something in his grandfather's eyes makes him shrink.
Do not mistake the crown for unchecked power. A king who rules by fear alone will one day find himself without a kingdom to rule.
Joffrey swallows, his jaw tightening, but he says nothing. Tywin leans back, satisfied. The first lesson has been taught. Tywin Lannister never wastes words. When he speaks, it is not a suggestion, but a command. Cersei learns this the hard way. In the privacy of the Solar, with the doors firmly shut, Tywin strips away all pretense.
You have failed him.
He tells her, no emotion, no cruelty, just the simple, brutal truth. Cersei does not argue, not at first, but her green eyes burn, her nails dig into her palms. She is not used to being dismissed, not by her father, not by anyone. Tywin does not care.
I will take over his education. You will step aside.
It is not a debate. It is a decree. Joffrey belongs to him now. But Tywin sees more than just Joffrey's faults. He sees Cersei's intentions. A whisper here, a slight change of plans there. He pieces it together before it happens. Robert Baratheon is being set up to die. The wine, the hunt, the perfect accident. Tywin confronts her, quietly, ruthlessly.
Joffrey is not ready.
He says, as if the entire realm depends on it. Because it does. If Joffrey takes the throne now, he will destroy what the Lannisters have built. He will act without control, without fear, without discipline. The lords of Westeros will rebel before he can even solidify his reign. Cersei seethes, but she listens. The hunt will go on. Robert will live. For now. From that day forward, Joffrey is never alone. He is not to speak at council meetings, only to listen. He follows his grandfather through the halls of power, watching as matters of war, coin, and diplomacy are handled by men who do not flinch at death. He is given tutors in strategy, history, philosophy, language, and combat. The best masters gold can buy. But Tywin sees the truth. Joffrey does not care for learning. He mimics the posture of a king, but behind his eyes there is only hunger. Not for power, but for cruelty. He enjoys watching men grovel. He delights in pain. Tywin has seen his kind before, in battlefields, in dungeons, in dark corners where monsters without crowns were cut down before they could become real threats. But Joffrey is a Lannister. Tywin cannot simply discard him. He must be controlled. Tyrion brings it up first, not as a warning, not as a concern, simply as an observation made with the careless ease of a man who drinks too much and sees too clearly.
He needs an outlet.
An outlet?
Sex. The boy is at that age, isn't he? Let him fuck a few whores. It might make him more tolerable.
A pause. Tywin says nothing. He does not like indulging in vulgar talk, but Tyrion, as usual, has a point. Joffrey is restless, a boiling cauldron of frustration, arrogance, and unspent rage. If there is a way to temper that, it must be considered. So, it is done. A girl is sent, paid well, told what to do. She enters his chambers at night, and when she emerges, her face is barely recognizable. Bruises black and swollen, a split lip, blood on her torn dress. She limps away, silent, never looking back. The castle whispers. The servants turn their eyes away. Tywin hears of it before morning, and he understands. Joffrey is not simply cruel. He is uncontrolled. This is not lust. It is sadism. Left unchecked, it will spill into the open, and when it does, it will be the undoing of them all. So Tywin does what must be done. He calls upon Littlefinger. A deal is struck. Gold for silence. Gold for fresh girls who will not speak, who will not be missed. Joffrey may be a monster, but he will only be a monster behind closed doors. In public, he will be a prince. Tywin does not approve, but he accepts, because power is not about morals. It is about control. And as long as Tywin Lannister holds the leash, the beast will remain caged. As the months pass, one fact becomes clear. Joffrey needs a wife, a strong political alliance. The council debates. Varys suggests Marjorie Tyrell. The Reach is rich, powerful, fertile, a wise match. Tyrion disagrees.
We need the north. Winter is coming. If Robert dies, the last tie between the north and the south dies with him. And if the Starks declare independence, what happens? Will we Southerners go freeze to fight for it? Even if we go, could we really win this war?
Tywin listens, and for the first time, he agrees with Tyrion. Robert Baratheon remains a figurehead, a king in name only. He drinks, he whores, he fights in the yard, but he does not rule. That power now belongs to Tywin. And with each passing day, Cersei loses control. Her son is no longer hers to shape. Her power is no longer hers to wield. Tyrion, once the outcast, now sits beside Tywin at the council. Cersei watches as the kingdom slips from her fingers, and she hates it. Robert Baratheon has never taken orders from any man. Not from his father, not from his brothers, not even from Jon Arryn, the man who raised him, and certainly not from Tywin Lannister. So when the old lion steps into his solar, Robert is already scowling, a goblet of wine clenched in his hand.
No!
The word cracks through the room before Tywin has even finished speaking. Robert leans forward, his blue eyes burning with defiance.
You think you can march in here and dictate my son's marriage? To a bloody Stark? I will not have it.
Still, Tywin says nothing.
I've had enough of you Lannisters pulling at my reins.
He lets the silence stretch just long enough for Robert's irritation to shift into something else. Doubt. And then, only then, does he speak.
The realm is drowning in debt.
A king is always in debt, what of it?
The Iron Bank does not forgive. The Faith does not forget. House Lannister collects.
How much?
3 million dragons and climbing.
Robert's face darkens. He knows he has spent too much, drunk too much, borrowed too much. But 3 million? He looks away, jaw clenching. Tywin presses forward.
You cannot afford to lose the North. If they break away, the realm fractures. If the realm fractures, war will come. War is expensive, Robert. You can barely afford your wine.
So, let them go.
Let them go. And when the wildlings pour over the wall, when the Greyjoys raid the western coast, when the Riverlands find themselves caught between two masters, the North is the spine of Westeros. If it breaks, the body crumbles. Joffrey will marry Sansa Stark. That is the way of it.
A pause. A long, heavy pause. Then, with gritted teeth, Robert grunts out his surrender. Tywin does not gloat. He simply nods. The wedding is set. A raven flies north, and House Stark answers the call. Ned and Catelyn arrive at King's Landing with their children. Robb remains in Winterfell. Jon is already at the wall. Sansa's eyes are wide with wonder. Arya's are filled with disdain. Bran and Rickon are too young to understand. And Ned and Catelyn, they know they have no choice. The grand hall is alive with light, music, and the scent of roasted meat. Lords and ladies drink, laugh, whisper. Sansa glows, draped in southern silks, her hair braided in the queen's style. Joffrey is poised, measured, polite. He has learned his lessons well, but behind the mask of golden curls and princely smiles, the monster still lurks. Tywin watches him closely. Across the room, amidst the noise and celebration, Robert Baratheon drops into the seat beside Eddard Stark. His cheeks are flushed with wine, but his eyes, they are clear. He exhales, running a hand through his graying hair.
7 hells, Ned. I thought I'd never see the day. One of your pups wedding one of my cubs. I always wanted our houses bound.
Careful what you wish for, Robert. You've yet to see if they'll bite each other.
Aye, you're not wrong. My boy's got some line in him. And yours, well, she looks happy enough. I was angry, Ned. I don't hold grudges, but I was angry. I wanted you at my side.
And I wanted to keep my head on my shoulders.
Smart man. Smarter than me. I miss the old days, Ned. Before crowns and councils. Just you, me, a battlefield, and the open road.
We can never go back, Robert.
No, but we can drink to what once was.
Ned clinks his cup against Robert's. For just a moment, there is no court, no politics, no war, just 2 old friends. Just Robert and Ned, like it used to be. Later that evening, Varys joins Ned discreetly. The spider does not look at him directly. He merely pours himself a cup of wine, swirling it absently.
Jon Arryn's death was a tragedy, Lord Stark. He was in good health, and then suddenly he wasn't. Curious, don't you think?
What are you saying?
Only that he had many questions before he died. He was searching. I wonder if he ever found his answer.
And just like that, Varys is gone, leaving only unease behind. The next morning, beneath the eyes of gods and men, the vows are spoken. Sansa Stark becomes Sansa Baratheon. The North and South are bound by blood. Tywin Lannister has secured the realm. The North will not rebel. Joffrey has his queen. The Starks have their future. The game is played and won. For now. But not all games are finished. The morning after the wedding, Ned Stark walks alone. Through the silent corridors of the Red Keep, past the tapestries of old kings, through the archways that whisper of power and betrayal, until he reaches Grand Maester Pycelle's chambers. The old man is already awake, draped in his heavy robes, a cup of warm tea in his trembling hands. He smiles when he sees Ned and asks him what brings him into his chambers. Ned does not waste time.
Jon Arryn's final days. I hear he was reading something.
Pycelle blinks. His smile fades. He gestures to a nearby shelf. Ned steps forward, running his fingers over the dusty leather covers until he finds it. The lineages and histories of the great houses of the Seven Kingdoms. He takes it without another word. Pycelle does not stop him. Ned does not look back. He walks away, the book heavy in his hands, and with it, the first step toward the truth. For the first few months, Sansa is smitten. She writes to her parents, her words filled with joy, admiration, and hope.
Joffrey is so kind to me. He brings me gifts, takes me on walks, and speaks to me of the future. He will be a great king. I am certain of it.
At banquets, she sits beside him, smiling, radiant. The lords and ladies of the court whisper among themselves. The little dove has found her place. The North must be pleased. A true queen in the making. Even Tyrion, ever the skeptic, starts to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, his nephew has learned restraint. But Tywin does not trust illusions, and he watches. Slowly, subtly, things begin to change. Sansa's letters home become shorter.
The capital is different from Winterfell, but I am adjusting. Joffrey is busy with his duties, but he still finds time for me. I miss you all.
By the 6th month, she writes only once every few weeks. And in King's Landing, she begins to fade. She limps at times. Bruises bloom on her delicate arms, sometimes hidden beneath her dresses, sometimes not hidden at all. Her once bright blue eyes seem duller, and Tywin notices. So does Tyrion. And so one night, Tyrion confronts Joffrey. The torches flicker in the halls of the Red Keep. Joffrey lounges on his chair, his goblet full, a lazy smirk on his lips. Tyrion stands before him, jaw clenched, hands balled into tight fists.
Sansa limps.
Joffrey laughs.
She tripped.
And the bruises.
She's clumsy.
Tyrion doesn't think. He strikes him. The sound echoes against the stone walls. Joffrey jerks back, eyes wide with shock, then rage. Tyrion grabs the front of his tunic, dragging him forward.
She is your wife, Joffrey. If you want to play king, act like one. Do not ruin her. Do not ruin us.
Joffrey tears himself away, his face burning red with humiliation. He says nothing, but Tyrion sees it. He has made an enemy. And then the news comes. Sansa is pregnant. She writes home.
Mother, Father, I have wonderful news. Joffrey and I are expecting a child. I hope it will bring joy to both of you. I miss you more than words can say.
Ned and Catelyn read the letter together. For the first time in months, they allow themselves a breath of relief. Perhaps now Joffrey will take better care of his wife. But in King's Landing, the nights in the Red Keep do not change. The whores still come and go, or, for some, never leave at all. The Queen still flinches when her husband enters the room. The servants still whisper. Sansa is not safe, and she knows it. So she writes a different letter, a desperate one.
Father, Mother, I am pregnant, but I fear for my life. I was right saying he is nothing like his father. The king is kind to me where Joffrey is cruel. He beats me every night. I do not know if I will live to see my child born. Please, I beg you, help me.
She seals it with shaking hands, gives it to a trusted handmaiden to deliver. But Grand Maester Pycelle intercepts it. He reads it, and then he burns it, then goes to tell Cersei Lannister about it. Sansa never knows, but Varys does. He finds her in the gardens where she walks alone now. Varys moves like a shadow, gliding toward her without sound.
My lady.
Lord Varys,
You seem troubled.
I have not received news from my family in weeks.
Perhaps the letters never left.
Could you send one for me?
Of course, my lady.
And so, Sansa writes, and this time she tells everything.
Father, Mother, I am pregnant, but I fear for my life. I was right saying he is nothing like his father. The king is kind to me where Joffrey is cruel. He beats me every night. I do not know if I will live to see my child born. Please, I beg you, help me.
Varys takes the letter, and he delivers it. The raven arrives in Winterfell. Ned reads the letter 3 times over. Catelyn presses a hand to her mouth, shaking. Robb demands to ride south, but Ned tells him to wait. Reading this letter over and over, something clicks in Ned's mind. He had been reading the book borrowed from Pycelle, but now he realizes what it means. All Baratheon true-born are black of hair. Only Cersei's children have golden hair. Could it be that they are not Robert's legitimate children? Is Joffrey a bastard? But then, 2 days later, another raven comes. Sansa Stark is dead. Lord Stark, it is with great sorrow that I write to inform you of your daughter's passing. Sansa perished in childbirth. The babe was weak and did not survive the night. May the mother grant her peace. It is signed by Grand Maester Pycelle. Ned's hands tremble. Catelyn, standing beside him, presses a hand to her mouth, her breath catching in her throat.
No.
Her voice is barely a whisper. Ned does not move. Robb, reading over his father's shoulder, shakes his head, stepping back, disbelief in his eyes. But the words do not change. Bran and Rickon do not understand. Arya does not believe it.
She was strong, she was healthy, she wouldn't just die.
Neither would the child. Something is wrong. They all feel it. The truth is twisting beneath the surface, hidden behind carefully chosen words. Ned clenches the letter in his fist. Sansa is gone, and the child that could have secured the North's future is gone with her. House Stark grieves. But deep inside, Ned knows his daughter did not die of fever. She did not die of childbirth. She died because she was married to a monster. Not all secrets remain buried. One woman sees. A septa, a simple woman of faith. She had been walking the halls of the Red Keep when she heard footsteps, and then a body. Sansa, stumbling out of her chambers, an arrow lodged in her shoulder, blood trailing down her dress. Her hands gripping the wound, shaking, and behind her, laughter. Joffrey's voice, bright with amusement.
It's just a scratch, dear wife. You shouldn't have tried to send this letter to your family.
The septa runs, and in the quiet sanctuary of the Great Sept, she kneels before the High Sparrow, and she tells him everything. The Game of Thrones has been played, but the gods have not yet spoken, and soon vengeance will come. At this point, we all know Joffrey is beyond saving, but if you were Tywin, how would you have handled him? Could he have been controlled, or was he always doomed to be a monster? Joffrey Baratheon, future king of the Seven Kingdoms, is locked inside his chambers. It is not a request. It is not a suggestion. It is an order. Tywin gave it personally. No one is to let Joffrey leave. No one is to let him speak. No one is to let the realm see his face. Outside, the city boils. Inside, Joffrey seethes. His fists clench, his knuckles white, his lips curling in fury. And for the first time in his miserable, indulgent, violent life, Joffrey Baratheon is afraid. Tywin Lannister does not waste time. As soon as Pycelle's letter reaches Winterfell, detailing the official lie of Sansa's death, Tywin gathers his most trusted advisors, Cersei, Tyrion. They are the only ones who know the truth. Robert believes the lie. The realm believes the lie. But lies do not stay buried forever. And Tyrion is enraged.
You let this happen? You let that sadistic little monster murder his own wife, murder his own child, and now we're just meant to pretend it never happened.
Cersei rolls her eyes, pouring herself a goblet of wine.
Calm yourself. The official story is sound. The North will mourn. But they won't go to war over a death that cannot be undone.
Cannot be undone? You fool. If they learn the truth, it will not just be war. It will be annihilation. Ned Stark will not stop at one battle. He will burn this entire city to the ground.
Tywin says nothing, because he knows Tyrion is right. But what they do not know is that the truth is already spreading. The whispers start in the taverns, in the markets, in the brothels where the bodies never returned. At first, they are just rumors. The king killed his queen. The king killed his own heir. The king's chambers are washed in blood. And then, the whispers become voices. The faith militant gathers in hidden corners of the city, speaking of justice. Joffrey Baratheon is no king of ours. He is a murderer, a butcher, a beast in human skin. The people listen, and the streets begin to turn. What Tywin does not know, what Tyrion and Cersei cannot control, is that a septa has already gone to the High Sparrow. She has told him everything. The whores Joffrey has tortured, the way Sansa tried to flee, only to be hunted down like prey, the arrow in her back, the laughter, and now the faith has a cause, and the people have a reason to rebel. The city begins to riot. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button. It really helps us create better content. The rumors reach Renly first. He hears them in the halls of the Red Keep, among the knights and courtiers who speak in hushed voices. And when he does, he goes straight to Robert. At first, Robert laughs it off.
Ridiculous. The boy's an idiot, but he wouldn't be so stupid.
But then, Renly does not laugh, and Robert sees the truth in his brother's face. The laughter dies. The color drains from his skin. And then, rage. Not just anger, not just fury. Pure, violent, all-consuming rage. He storms through the castle, guards struggling to keep up, until he reaches Joffrey's chambers. The guards step aside. They do not dare stop him. The doors burst open. Joffrey looks up, startled, his goblet tipping over.
What's the meaning of this?
The first blow comes fast. Joffrey stumbles back, blood pouring from his nose. Robert does not stop. His fists crash into his son's face, into his golden hair, into his spoiled, wretched, monstrous little body.
You killed my grandson! You killed Ned's daughter!
Joffrey sputters, chokes, claws at his father's arms. But Robert does not stop. Not until Joffrey is curled on the ground, coughing up red. The king straightens, chest heaving, hands trembling with rage. And he turns to the guards.
He does not leave this room.
Joffrey does not speak. He can barely breathe. But the lesson has been taught. From the capital, in the cold halls of Winterfell, another conversation takes place. Littlefinger arrives with a smirk, with news, and with the truth that Ned Stark has long suspected.
Joffrey killed your daughter.
The words are a dagger, but Littlefinger is not done. Ned tells him what he has learned. The book John Arryn was writing. The lineages, the hair color, the truth he has uncovered, and Littlefinger confirms it.
You are not the only one who has doubted their legitimacy, Lord Stark. This suspicion killed Lord Arryn. Joffrey is no king. He is no Baratheon. He is a bastard.
Littlefinger explains everything, starting with who the real father of Cersei's children is. The words fall like thunder, and with them, the first whispers of war. Winterfell is silent. The halls of House Stark, once filled with warmth, now carry only grief and fury. Eddard Stark is not a man easily broken. He has endured war. He has endured loss. But the death of his daughter, murdered by the monster she was forced to wed, erased by a lie, it is too much. And the worst of it, there is no justice. Not in King's Landing. Not with a Lannister hand. Not with a drunken king who ignores the truth. But Ned knows what must be done. He must ride south. He must look Robert in the eyes and tell him the truth himself. He must see justice served. But Catelyn stops him.
If you go to King's Landing, you will not return.
I cannot sit here and do nothing.
Your brother rode south for justice. Your father followed. They never came back. Do not make me watch another Stark march to his death.
Ned breathes heavily, jaw clenched. He knows she is right. If he rides to King's Landing alone, he will meet the same fate. But that does not mean he will sit by and wait for justice to be denied. So he does the only thing left to do. He calls the banners. The ravens fly from Winterfell, carried on the wind, their message shaking the realm. Joffrey Baratheon is no king. He is a bastard born of incest between Cersei Lannister and her brother Jaime. He murdered Sansa Stark, my daughter, his own wife, and their unborn child. He is a sadist, a psychopath, unfit to rule the Seven Kingdoms. Until justice is served, the North recognizes the Iron Throne no longer. The bannermen are summoned. Hornwood, Bolton, Karstark, Manderley, Reed. The North prepares for war, and the South trembles at its coming. The rumors reach Robert quickly. He storms through the Red Keep, his fists clenched, his heart pounding with fury. He finds Cersei alone in her solar. She does not flinch as he enters. She does not even rise from her chair. She simply tilts her head, watching him, as if she has already won.
Tell me it's not true. Tell me he is my son.
Cersei does not answer. She takes a slow sip of wine. She smiles. And that is all the answer he needs. Robert's hands shake, not with fear, not with grief, with pure, unfiltered rage.
You have made me a fool.
You were already a fool.
Robert lunges, but before he can even raise a hand, the door bursts open. Guards. Lannister guards. Robert stops. He sees the truth now. The game is already lost. Cersei won long ago. That night, Robert Baratheon is found dead in his chambers. Grand Maester Pycelle declares it was a fever that took him swiftly. The court mourns, the realm bows. But Tyrion sees through it. So does Tywin. So does Renly. But it does not matter, because the next morning the crown is placed on Joffrey's head, and the people riot in the streets. The news of Robert's death reaches Winterfell in the dead of night. Ned Stark does not react at first. Not when he reads the official letter, the words carefully crafted to make it seem as if Robert's passing was natural. Not when Catelyn clutches his arm, her face pale. Not when Robb curses, slamming his fist on the table. He simply sits there, reading the words again and again, as if by sheer will he could force them to change. Then, a second raven arrives, this one from Renly Baratheon. It is short, to the point.
Joffrey will never be my king. I ride to war. The Baratheon stag will stand with the direwolf.
For the first time since Sansa's death, hope flickers in Ned's eyes. He looks to Master Luwin, his voice steady, unshaken.
Send word to Riverrun. The Riverlands will stand with us.
And send a raven to Dragonstone.
To Stannis.
Robert's true heir sits on Dragonstone. The Iron Throne is his by right. If there is to be justice, it will start with him.
The next morning, the banners are raised. The wolves of the north march to war. And for the first time in 17 years, Westeros belongs to no king, only to the chaos that follows. Winterfell is behind them, but the entire north moves as one. At Ned Stark's command, the bannermen of the north answer the call. From the Dreadfort, Roose Bolton rides with his men, silent, calculating. From White Harbor, Lord Manderly's fleet sails down the White Knife, carrying supplies and men to meet the army on land. From the Wolfswood, the Last Hearth, Carhold, and the Rills, the lords gather their strength, marching toward the Twins, where the first true test of their campaign awaits them. The North cannot pass into the Riverlands without crossing the Green Fork, and the only way across it is through the Twins, the seat of House Frey. Walder Frey, old, cunning, spiteful, does not rush to welcome them. Instead, he makes them wait. He knows the Starks need him, and he intends to make them pay for it. Ned Stark, pragmatic as ever, meets with the Lord of the Crossing in his great hall. The air stinks of damp stone and old meat. Walder Frey smiles his toothless grin, eyes darting between Ned and Robb.
A mighty army you have there, Stark. Shame it can't swim.
Ned keeps his voice measured.
What do you want, Lord Frey?
Walder licks his lips, his beady eyes glinting with amusement.
A marriage. One of your sons, or perhaps a daughter to one of my dear little ones.
A pause. A long pause. Ned exhales slowly.
I will not sell my children like horses at market. If you want loyalty, you'll have it. If you want a deal, I suggest you remember who truly needs this alliance, Lord Frey.
Walder Frey's grin fades, but he does not refuse outright, because the Starks are not the only ones at war. The Riverlands are already burning under Lannister raids. House Frey is loyal to itself, but they know that siding with Lannisters over the Riverlords would be costly. So, grudgingly, Walder Frey opens the gates. For now. The North crosses the Twins, and war marches on. A raven reaches Dragonstone. Stannis Baratheon reads the words twice, then a third time. The truth is written plainly. Joffrey is a bastard born of incest. Robert was murdered. The Iron Throne is his by right. Across the chamber, Melisandre watches him. And so, Stannis raises his banners. The Stormlords who remain loyal gather under his command. The Red Priestess blesses their blades, speaking of R'hllor's will. The fleet sets sail north, rounding Crackclaw Point. By the time Stannis reaches the Riverlands, his army is larger than expected, for many in the Crownlands, having heard the truth, flock to his cause. And now, Stannis Baratheon, the last true heir of Robert's line, rides for Riverrun. In Storm's End, Renly Baratheon gathers his own forces. Where Stannis has righteousness, Renly has charm and ambition, and charm wins hearts faster than truth. The Reach stands behind him. House Tyrell, House Tarly, House Florent. The Riverlands have already sided with the North. House Tully marches to war, and when Renly rides for Riverrun, he does so not as Robert's youngest brother, but as a king in his own right. For the first time in history, the banners of the Direwolf, the Crowned Stag, and the Fiery Heart fly together. The three armies converge outside Riverrun, stretching for miles along the red fork of the Trident. Tents of red, blue, green, and gray cover the fields, thousands of men gathering under different kings, yet facing the same enemy. And at the heart of it all, in a massive command tent, the leaders meet. Ned Stark, Stannis Baratheon, Renly Baratheon. The air is thick with tension. Each man knows why they are here. Each man knows what is at stake. But only one will sit in the Iron Throne when this war is over. For now, however, their enemy is the same. Joffrey Baratheon sits the Iron Throne. The Lannisters hold the capital, and justice must be done. The war for the throne is no longer a distant shadow. It is here. It is real, and it will change the realm forever. The banners of the Direwolf, the Stag, and the Fiery Heart fly together as the great armies of the North, the Stormlands, the Riverlands, and the Reach push into the Crownlands. For years, the Lannisters ruled the capital with gold and steel. But now, vengeance comes from the north, the south, and the sea. The Lannister strongholds along the way try to resist. They fail. At Duskendale, Stannis' army storms the walls, breaking the garrison with disciplined precision. At Rosby, Renly's forces surround the castle. After 3 days, it surrenders without bloodshed. The people cheer for their king. At Bywater, Robb Stark leads the northern vanguard, cutting through Lannister forces like winter's first frost. The enemy scatters, retreating toward King's Landing. But there is no true refuge for them there, for the capital is already burning from within. As the battlefront moves closer, Tywin Lannister is left with one bitter truth. The war is slipping through his fingers. His golden lions have lost their bite. He sends desperate orders for his forces to rally at the Blackwater, but it is too late. At Stokeworth, the North and the Riverlands ambush his army, cutting through his lines with brutal efficiency. Jaime Lannister, the Kingslayer himself, leads the Lannister counterattack, but he is outnumbered. For the first time since Robert's rebellion, Jaime is forced to yield. Tywin, cornered, is given no such mercy. He is dragged in chains before Lord Eddard Stark and Stannis Baratheon. Tywin stands tall, unbroken, even in defeat.
You think you're different, Stark? You think honor wins wars?
No, but justice does.
The execution is swift. Tywin Lannister, the most powerful man in Westeros, dies not in a grand chamber, not on his golden chair, but on his knees, in the mud of the battlefield. His head is sent to King's Landing, and with it, the final message. The Lannister reign is over. As the march continues, the alliance begins to crack. At night, inside a command tent, Stannis and Renly face each other. The air between them is thick with resentment.
I am the rightful king. I am Robert's heir. The throne is mine by law.
And yet the people cheer for me, not you.
Stannis' jaw tightens. Renly has married Marjorie Tyrell, securing the Reach and its armies. He is loved, adored.
A king must be more than lawful, brother. He must be beloved. And I have that. You do not?
A king must be strong. You are a man playing at crowns, but when the true test comes, you will falter.
The argument escalates. Blades are almost drawn. The brothers part without peace. The alliance is fragile. But for now, the enemy is still Joffrey. King's Landing is within reach. The closer the armies get, the weaker the Lannisters become. The Faith Militant spreads its message through the streets. Joffrey killed his queen. He murdered the child in her womb. The gods will punish the wicked. The people riot. Lannister banners are torn down, burned. The gold cloaks, sworn to defend the city, begin deserting. Joffrey hides in the Red Keep, furious, terrified.
I am the king. They should love me.
Cersei tries to hold the court together, but without Tywin, without Jaime, without allies, she is losing control. And then, the gates of the city swing open. The people cheer as Renly enters first, his green banners flying high. The Lannister loyalists fight back. Steel clashes in the streets. Renly's men, the Stormlands, and the Reach flood into the city. The Faith Militant joins them, striking down every Lannister soldier they find. At the Blackwater Rush, Stannis and the North surround the city, cutting off any escape. The battle for King's Landing has begun, and the boy king sits trapped in his castle, waiting for the wolves to arrive. The city burns, but in the chaos, one force rises. The Faith Militant, armed and unyielding, marches through the streets of King's Landing, not in defiance, but in purpose. They do not come to destroy. They come to crown, for they have already chosen their king. Not the Red God's puppet. Not a man who kneels to dark magic and foreign fire. No, their king is Renly Baratheon, young, charming, loved by the people, a king who bows to the Seven, not to a sorceress in red robes. And so, before Ned Stark and Stannis Baratheon even set foot in the Red Keep, Renly marches first. The Tyrell banners wave beside him. The golden roses of the Reach bloom in the streets. The people welcome him, and the Red Keep falls without a fight. The throne room is eerily silent when Renly enters. The Iron Throne stands before him, empty. Cersei sits stiffly near the dais, her face pale but composed. Joffrey quivers beside her, his lips trembling, eyes darting between the armed men surrounding them. Tyrion, bruised and weary, stands apart, already knowing his fate is sealed. The youngest Lannister children, Marcella and Tommen, are gently taken aside. They will not suffer for their mother's sins. But Joffrey, he is dragged forward, kicking, sputtering.
I am your king!
But no one listens, because a new king has already arrived. Renly steps forward, his eyes on the Iron Throne. And then, before the court, before the faith, before the people, he sits. And in that moment, Renly Baratheon is king. Not by birthright, not by war, but by the will of the people, and the Faith Militant stands behind him. When Ned Stark and Stannis Baratheon arrive at the Red Keep, their armies victorious, they expect to take the city. Instead, the city is already taken. The banners of House Baratheon fly, but not Stannis' fiery heart, not the direwolf of the north, only Renly's stag and the golden rose of the Tyrells. The faith militant stands in the streets, their armor glinting beneath the rising sun. The war is over, and Renly is already king. Renly played his cards perfectly, but is he truly the best king for Westeros? Stannis had the claim, but Renly had the people. Who would you follow? But Ned did not come to fight for a throne. He came for justice. So when he enters the Red Keep, he demands one thing first.
Where is Cersei? Where is Joffrey?
He finds them in the Great Hall, guards surrounding them. Joffrey refuses to speak, refuses to meet his gaze. He cowers, his hands shaking, his breath shallow. But Tyrion meets Ned's eyes and speaks the truth. He tells him everything.
She was trapped. No one was coming to save her. She feared for her life, and she was right to. Joffrey took pleasure in cruelty, and Sansa paid the price.
A heavy silence falls over the room. Ned closes his eyes. A long, deep breath. Then he speaks.
Tyrion Lannister, you and your brother Jaime will take the Black. Your debts to this world end at the Wall.
Tyrion nods. He knows it is the best mercy he will get.
Cersei Lannister, you will be given to the faith. You will atone for your sins as a servant of the Seven.
Cersei stiffens, her pride cracking for the first time. The faith militant steps forward, ready to take her away. But then Ned looks at Joffrey, and there is no mercy left. The execution is set for dawn. The streets of King's Landing are packed, the people hungry for justice. They remember the riots, the starvation, the cruelty. They remember the beatings, the executions, the way Joffrey laughed as he ruled. Now he kneels before them, his hands bound, his golden hair tangled and dirty. The faith militant stands in formation, ensuring that the false king will not escape his fate. Ned Stark watches from the platform, his face grim, unreadable. Renly sits on the Iron Throne, observing. Joffrey shakes violently, his chest rising and falling in panicked breaths.
Please, I don't want to die.
The city does not care. The people jeer, spit, throw rotten food at him. For the first time, Joffrey Baratheon feels the fear he so easily inflicted on others. Ned steps forward.
Joffrey Baratheon, you are guilty of murder, of tyranny, of cruelty beyond measure. You have brought nothing but suffering to these lands. You are no king. In the name of justice, in the name of the realm, and in the name of my daughter, I, Eddard Stark, sentence you to die.
Joffrey sobs. Ned Stark does not hesitate. With a single swift motion, ice, the great sword of House Stark, cleaves through the false king's neck. His head falls to the ground. The crowd erupts in cheers. The reign of Joffrey Baratheon is over, and justice has been done. When the sentence is carried out, Stannis speaks first.
The throne is mine by right.
But no one moves to follow him. One by one, lords kneel before Renly. The Tyrells, the Riverlands, even the Faith. The people have made their choice. Renly is the king we need. Renly is loved. Stannis stands alone. He turns to Ned, but Ned Stark is already looking north, for he has heard the rumors. Beyond the wall, a king is rising. Mance Rayder, a former member of the Night's Watch. The true war is about to begin, and Ned Stark must be ready. Winter is coming, and Westeros will need every sword it has. The war for the throne is over, or is it just beginning? Do you think Stannis will forget it that easily? Drop your theories in the comments below, and if you love deep dives into what-if theories, don't forget to subscribe for more.